I don't think that many Black Americans or other groups know how this sentiment is so deeply rooted into America's society. I'll explain when I come back. Hey folks, let's just jump into this. And excuse my voice, I think it's a little hoarse. When I get tired, my voice gets hoarse. And then it's been unusually warm out here. But like y'all came to hear all that, right? Okay, let's jump into this. As I said, I don't think you guys realize how deeply rooted this mentality is ingrained in our society. And what I mean by that is, have you ever heard of law of deadly deference? This refers to a deeply rooted historical and often implicit expectation within the American legal and social system that Black Americans must submit, show total subservience, and defer to white authority, particularly police or vigilantes, to avoid lethal violence. This, combined with a legal system that historically failed to punish white perpetrators of violence against Black people, created a functional law of fatal obedience. Historical analysts and research indicate that from the era of slavery through the Jim Crow period and into modern times, a structural and social expectation has existed for Black people to prioritize the safety, comfort, and authority of white people, often at the cost of their own safety, rights, and lives. This dynamic is rooted in the creation of a racial hierarchy designed to maintain white supremacy. And the example of this mindset that is deeply, deeply rooted in America, you see that example through these screenshots of comments left by white women. You know, when I first started doing this channel in 23, I believe, I still do a lot of research, but as I was researching topics to do videos for this channel, I was just having these thoughts like, damn, it was based on the research, the things I was reading, materials I was reading. I said, it seemed like, I'm not going to say all white Americans, so don't get offended. You know what? It's going to be a time you guys are going to have to stop being offended by the truth. If the truth offend you and you say you are a Christian, quote unquote, something ain't right. But anyway, it seemed like some white Americans expect us to put their safety and comfort before our own. I was like, that's how it feels. You know, I don't think I ever ran into anything that confirmed that physically, but it got confirmed last week when I saw these screenshots. When two women literally said, one woman said, can we just go back to regular police brutality, please? That means we ain't used to this. This is what happened to nigresses. And we really don't care what happened to them because they're expendable. And you might think, oh, she's doing extras. You're sounding a little crude. No, that is the mentality. You guys are cool with speaking this way in private. Oh, it was just a negress that got killed by the police. Who knows what they did for that to happen to them? Maybe next time you should comply. And then the other one came and said, I'll be honest, I did not expect it to be white people. They would publicly execute first. They are letting you know that this This is how they feel about you. The deadly deference demand from Black Americans. They expect us, and it's still ingrained in them today. Hundreds of years later, they expect us to put their comfort and safety before our own. Okay, let's get into the content. You see the videos. They play out in a dozen different ways, but the script is always the same. A park, grocery store aisles, a quiet residential street, a Black person is doing something completely ordinary, bird watching, shopping, jogging, and a white person perceives a threat. Not a physical threat, but a disruption. A disruption to their comfort, their sense of order. The encounter escalates, the police are called, and the world watches another viral moment of disbelief. Now imagine a different scene, the dusty roads of the Jim Crow South. There's an unwritten but brutally enforced rule that a Black man has to step off the sidewalk into the street to let a white person pass. He can't make eye contact. He has to show deference in his posture, his words, his very presence. What if I told you that this moment is connected to this one? That they're linked by an unwritten law that's been brutally enforced for centuries. A law that isn't in any books but is etched into the American psyche. The law of deadly deference demanded from Black America. This demand of deference was never just about manners. It was a pillar of a racial caste system designed to remind Black people of their so-called place at every moment of every day. And when etiquette failed, law and terror were waiting to enforce it. During slavery, this was absolute. The slave codes were more than just a legal framework, classifying Black people as property. They were designed to ensure total white control. Throughout the colonial era, laws evolved to keep Black people disarmed. By 1723, Virginia had passed a law explicitly forbidding free Black people from carrying weapons, creating a society where one group was permanently armed and the other permanently disarmed, all in the name of preventing revolts. After the Civil War, the system was rebuilt under a new name, Jim Crow. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments promised freedom and citizenship, but they were systematically torn apart by Black codes and Jim Crow laws. These laws were paired with a vicious system of social etiquette meant to govern every interaction. Black people weren't to be called Mr. or Miss. They were called by their first names or just boy. A Black person was never to offer their hand to a white person, and they certainly couldn't show public affection because it was deemed offensive to white people. The goal was singular. Black people had to constantly perform their own inferiority. The penalty of failing to do so was swift and often lethal. Look at the 1836 lynching of Francis McIntosh in St. Louis. A free Black man was arrested, and in the struggle, he unalived a deputy sheriff. A mob then dragged him from jail and burned him alive. It was a gruesome public spectacle of terror, bypassing the law entirely. The message was clear. Any challenge of white authority, real or imagined, would be met with overwhelming and fatal violence. This was the price of not showing deference. Now, you mean to tell me you don't still see that with the police force? Perfect example, Castile. Was it 2015? When he expressed that he was a law-abiding gun owner and he had a license to carry. And he was trying to reach for his identification, and the white officer didn't give him a chance to do anything but unalived him, right? What did this say? The message was clear. Any challenge to white authority, real or imagined. So it's an unwritten law. If a white person feels if they feel their safety is in jeopardy, whether it's real or imagine, they have a right to defend themselves, even if that means your life ends. Let's go on. In the early 20th century, about 6 million black Americans decided they would no longer pay that price. In one of the largest internal migrations in human history, they fled the Jim Crow South for the promise of the industrial North. The Great Migration was a powerful act of agency, a declaration of independence written with worn out shoes and train tickets. But this mass movement revealed a deep paradox. The same Southern elites who treated black people with such hostility were also completely dependent on their cheap labor. As black families left, a panic set in. Editorials warned that a black exodus would bankrupt the South. You see how you guys keep saying, you think you garnered that wealth you have still today on your own? No, it was created by my folks. You gotta either be quiet or rethink when you open your mouth and say a debt is not owed. Let's go on. That's why it's going to keep getting worse and worse for you. The more you keep denying that debt, but then sprinkling out money to other nations and people who come to this country who have no standing, you making it rain on these other folks who come to this country have no standing. It's going to keep getting worse for you. Let's go on. Their response wasn't to improve conditions. It was to stop black people from leaving. They weaponized vagrancy laws, making it illegal to be unemployed, and passed anti-enticement laws that made it a crime for companies to recruit black workers for northern jobs. You see that? They made it a crime to recruit black workers for northern jobs. It's God that's keeping me. It's only God that I'm able to do content like this, because there used to be a time that I couldn't tolerate reading the historic or the horrific history of my people. Let's go on. They did everything they could to chain black labor to the land, maintaining the white control economy. You did not make this wealth on your own. It was made off the back of my people, and soon and very soon you gonna realize that. You ain't just rich because you just rich. Let's go on. For those who made it north, they discovered that the unwritten law of deference had migrated with them. It just wore a different mask. Instead of being forced off the sidewalk, you were zoned out of the suburb. This was the era of racially restrictive covenants. Across the country, homeowners and developers created legally enforceable contracts prohibiting any property from being occupied by any person not of the Caucasian race. These weren't just private agreements. The Federal Housing Administration often required them as a condition for a mortgage. You didn't just have regular white folks that perpetuated this racism. You had the actual government perpetuating it. I read a book that said, and not for some reason it slips my mind right now, but he was saying that if it was just regular American white citizens that, were racist, it would have died out and wouldn't have had that much strength and power behind it. But when you have the whole United States government enforcing it, and in some cases required it, that's how it was allowed to go on so long, even to this day. Let's go on. Deference was now demanded at the property line, all to protect white neighborhoods and white comfort from the mere presence of black families. Even though the Supreme Court declared these covenants unenforceable in 1948, the damage was done, laying the foundation for generations of housing segregation and a massive racial wealth gap that persists today. Why are black people so poor? Why are you at the bottom? Houses, why you don't own that much property? Take your ass and go do some research, and you'll answer your own questions. But some of y'all don't want to know the truth. You just want to repeat things. You don't want to know the truth. because it's too harsh for you to swallow. Let's go on. Deference was now demanded at the property line, all to protect white neighborhoods and white comfort from the mere presence of black families. Even though the Supreme Court declared these covenants unenforceable in 1948, the damage was done, laying the foundation for generations of housing segregation and a massive racial wealth gap that persists today. Why are black people so poor? Why are you at the bottom? Houses, why you don't own that much property? Take your ass and go do some research, and you'll answer your own questions. But some of y'all don't want to know the truth. You just want to repeat things. You don't want to know the truth. Let's go on. For centuries, resistance to this demanded deference was often quiet and focused on survival. But in the 1950s and 60s, that resistance exploded into a public televised revolution. At its core, the civil rights movement was a mass refusal to be deferential. The movement brilliantly weaponized nonviolence to confront the unwritten rules of social hierarchy. Think about the sit-ins. Black students sitting quietly at whites-only lunch counters wasn't just asking for a sandwich. It was a racial act of defiance. It was a protest against the rule that black people should make themselves invisible. Think about the marches like the one from Selma to Montgomery, forcing their way onto public roads, facing down police dogs and police clubs, was a direct challenge to the idea that public space belonged to white people. It was a refusal to step aside, a declaration that these streets belong to them too. They gotta walk in the dangerous streets. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on that bus, it was about so much more than a seat. It was a rejection of the rule that a black person must always yield their physical space for a white person's comfort. Every one of these protests was a courageous and dangerous violation of the code of deference. That movement understood that to change the laws on the books, they first had to shatter the unwritten laws governing daily life. And they achieved monumental victories: the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that legally dismantled Jim Crow. But as we all know, ending a law and ending a culture are two very different things. And that is why we have to come out and fight with force, fight against them from allowing illegal immigrants to come over here and benefit from what our people literally laid their lives down for. We're not going to continue to allow them to take the Civil Rights Act and give it to everybody else and tell us to shut the hell up. We're not going to do it. And then I don't know what Trump called himself doing, talking about the Civil Rights Act caused white people to be treated so badly. If white people weren't treating my people so effing badly, we wouldn't have needed the Civil Rights Act. It's like, where the F is you guys critical thinking? We wouldn't need one if the other didn't happen. If you guys weren't so vicious with your racism and discrimination and biasness, we wouldn't need these laws. So blame yourself. Trump, you better get it together. The signs may say welcome instead of whites only, but the expectation of deference endures. It echoes in interactions we see every day and is still enforced with deadly consequences. It lives in our system of policing. In 2024, data show that police killed at least 1,365 people, the highest number since tracking began, and the disparity remains stark. Black people were 2.9 times more likely than white people to be unreliable police. These aren't just statistics, they are the final brutal enforcement of deference. They represent moments where a perceived lack of compliance, a failure to immediately submit, can be interpreted as a mortal threat. What did we just see on TV or on videos a couple of 3 weeks ago? In fact, a recent analysis showed that in police encounters, black people were over 3 times as likely as white people to experience the threat or use of non-fatal force. Now, what have we been seeing played out in news for the past few weeks? They have been experiencing what we have been experiencing for decades and centuries in this country. And it's hard for people to stomach it. It's too brutal to see. Damn, you didn't even give them a chance to comply. That's the mentality. They were murdered. We just watched these ICE agents murder them. Oh my God. But we've been saying the same thing. We've been yelling and screaming and saying the same thing. nobody was listening. Nobody cared because it was us. Now you want us to go out there and have the same thing happen over and over again. But you know what? I think this time it wouldn't happen the way. It's not going to just happen where you would just unalive our folks and then that's just that. And we going to be protesting and rioting. No. You better stop poking a bear, because you know that civil war you guys been pressing to have ever since the first one happened. I believe it would happen, but it's not going to be the outcome you expect. Because you guys got a lot of people pissed off. So let's go on. This unwritten rule also shows up in public spaces in the viral videos that have become their own genre. The Karen, who calls the police on a black family that having a barbecue, is the modern incarceration of a long history of policing white comfort. The message is the same as it's always been. Your presence here makes me uncomfortable, and my comfort is more important than your right to exist in this space. It's the expectation that black people must constantly manage the anxieties of the white people around them. I think their comfort, them being uncomfortable, I think what makes them uncomfortable to be around us is the fear of repercussions. Seeds, reaping and sowing. I don't say karma, because karma is a very weak, diluted, weak imitation of sowing and reaping. I don't know what karma is. I know what sowing and reaping means. And that is one of the reasons why they're terrified of being around us, because they're afraid any day they're going to see some brash, harsh examples of sowing and reaping what your ass has sown. Let's go on. It even echoes in our public health system. During the 1918 influenza pandemic, the official response was heavily segregated. Instead of addressing poor conditions that led to higher death rates, authorities often cordoned off black neighborhoods, a policy of containment that treated black communities as a threat to be managed, not as citizens to be cared for. This pattern of neglect has been seen in health crises ever since, where systemic inequities are often ignored in favor of narratives that burden marginalized communities. From slave codes to viral videos, this unwritten law has been a constant destructive force. It has demanded that black Americans shrink themselves, silence themselves, and sacrifice their dignity for the comfort of others. Recognizing this trend, this pattern of deadly deference is the first step toward finally breaking it. But awareness isn't enough. We have to examine the policies in our own communities, in housing, and policing, in our schools. We have to ask, who are these systems really designed to protect? We already know. That is why we said we are not participating in these protests, which I keep telling y'all, these protests are a waste of time. I think it's just to get camera time, and I think it's to create chaos for you to get your mind off of the tremendous fraud that is widespread throughout this nation. I think it's a distraction. But really, like I said, if you really wanted to protest, I think it's Italy, one of those countries, they're protesting their policies by boycotting. They shut down their finance. They stop spending money and have the government coming to the citizens, asking the citizens, what can they do? Have you guys heard about that? Look it up. They believe that mainstream media isn't covering it because they don't want you to do that, because you keep these corporations going. You keep this government going. You keep filling the pockets of these corrupt criminal politicians who really don't give a F about you, whether you're white, Hispanic, Asian, black. They don't care about you. They just care about your money, your greenbacks. So the mainstream public is not, the mainstream media isn't talking about what this, I think it's Italy. I just saw a video on TikTok about it. And yeah, they pull back their money. They stop spending. That is what keeps this country going. Your money. Why do you keep giving these people money and then crying about these policies? Black Americans already told you what happens when you go after a corporate giant like Target. You guys, oh, what is boycotting gonna do? And then you start seeing Target show that they lost billions of dollars. Billions of dollars is not $10. That's a lot of ass money. Just because they pull back. Now imagine if every group got on the same page and stopped spending your doggone money. What are you buying? How many more TVs can you buy? How many, unless it's something you really need. What do you need? What else do you need to spend your money on? How many shoes, clothes do you need? Who the F are you trying to impress? That's all this shit is about. Who you trying to impress? And then some of you women and men, you see these people driving around looking like they got it like that, and then find out it's their buddy's car they're rolling in. They don't even have the gas to put in the car. It's just so crazy. You guys are a trip. But you know what? Like the saying goes, when people are tired of being tired, Black Americans, I'm so ecstatic and happy for my folks that we finally got here. You know how long I've been waiting for y'all to get here. You know how tired I was of seeing y'all jumping y'all asses up in every damn protest that had nothing to do with you. And then after you done went out there and stood with these people, they turn around and tell you they have black fatigue. You done just stood out there, left your home, the comfort of your home, and left your family to go out in them streets to help them, and then later on they come saying they have black fatigue. The nerve. Okay, you ain't got to worry about black fatigue. Let me tell you how to deal with that. Stop watching our videos. Stop leaving your effing comments that we really don't care about, and stop asking us to help you. How about that? Black fatigue solved. I mean, you can only have that black fatigue when you go out looking for things we're talking about or saying or doing. We ain't looking for you. Yeah, well, we probably are looking for you for content purposes. We gotta laugh. I know that probably pissed people off, but I really don't give a F. You know what? You guys, it's so many people come. They come to my channel. I can always tell when I said something that pissed people off. They come to my channel. Hey, I'm coming to support. I love your content. Soon as I say something they don't like, it's like, I'm out this bitch. I ain't got time for this. I'm not supporting your channel. That's what I take it. I take some compliments. I take some compliments like a grain of salt. Thank you. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, let's see how long that's going to last. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed the information I provided for you guys. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for commenting. All right, folks, I'm out. I hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.